Speaking of pressure and about how the impact already of the Israel conflict is having on American politics, it is putting massive pressure on the GOP to wrap up its speaker drama, but not just quite yet. Let's put this up there on the screen. Steve Scalise, shocked actually yesterday, and won the internal vote to become the GOP speaker nominee, designate. But he does not have yet a majority support. What happened is they had a secret ballot behind the scenes where Steve Scalise was able to get 113 votes. Jim Jordan was able to get 99 votes. The thing is, though, Krystal, is that Steve Scalise's team got about 8 to a dozen members to actually vote present. So if they hadn't voted present and they would have voted for Jordan, it would have been a direct tie. So some smart maneuvering on his behalf.
Yeah, and keep in mind, Scalise is the whip right now.
Yeah, he's currently the whip.
This is counting votes and whipping votes. That's what he does, and clearly he did it very effectively here.
So he wins the vote. Okay, that's good for him. But the problem is they immediately are like, great, let's go to the floor and let's get this wrapped up, because they kind of had an agreement that whoever won that vote would then win and would get all the unanimous consent. Didn't happen. Instead, they immediately shut down the vote on the floor. And people behind the scenes, multiple congressmen, are saying, actually, no, I'm not going to vote for Steve Scalise. I'm only going to vote for Jim Jordan. One of them, actually, is Congressman Marjorie Taylor Greene, who laid out her case against Steve Scalise. Here's what she had to say.
Well, I think Jim Jordan is the fighter we need to be Speaker of the House right now. Our country's in crisis with our border situation becoming such a grave national security crisis. Jim Jordan, I think, is the guy for the job. You know, there's a lot of concerns right now. Some intel reports saying that we could even have a terrorist attack here at home. And we've already witnessed one in Israel right now, and that's certainly a situation that we're all praying for as we stand with Israel. But we're also, here we are still engaged in Ukraine. This seems to be another foreign war that we're funding their government with no end in sight. While the American people are suffering under crippling inflation and possibly a looming recession with our economy. The Speaker of the House is the hardest job in Congress, one of the hardest jobs in the country, and it's extremely demanding. And it's very personal to me, and I say this with the most compassion. My father died in April of 2021 with cancer, and I like Steve Scalise, and I like him so much that I want to see him be able to put all of his time and energy into defeating cancer. And I say that with just hoping the best for him.
You know, to be honest, I think that's a respectful and totally legitimate position. I see you doubting me.
I'm just saying, like, it's just so negative. Of course. I mean,
But it's also not untrue. I mean, he is diagnosed with was it blood cancer?
Yeah.
He's undergoing chemotherapy.
But he obviously made the choice of, like, I'm up to the job. So for her to, in this very, like, paternalistic way, like, oh, I'm just worried about you. No, I mean, she likes Jim Jordan better. Yeah. He has the vibes that she appreciates. He's more vocally anti-Ukraine. Like, to me, it's very naked. But it's sort of like, I find it sort of shameful to then use his illness to, oh, I really have your best interest at heart. No, you don't. You just have your own, like, political agenda at heart. Let's be clear about it.
All right. Well, maybe you're right. I don't know. Maybe I'm too good-hearted, because I'm like, oh, that's sweet. Let's put this up there on the screen from Matt Gaetz. He actually said Steve Scalise is better than McCarthy, but he also said the same thing for Jim Jordan. The thing is that Jim Jordan, and this is kind of the twist, Jim Jordan has offered to nominate Steve Scalise on the House floor. But despite that, all the people who want to vote for Jordan are not following Jim Jordan, which just goes to show you how much of a complete circus this entire thing is. Here's the truth. It's not about Jim Jordan. It's that they want to either extract concessions or they don't back up Steve Scalise. Nancy Mace yesterday, she's a special one, as Kevin McCarthy said. A true...
He had it right on that one.
He truly did. Yesterday she was like, I can't support Steve Scalise because he once spoke at a rally that David Duke has. I'm just like, what? Like, who are you? You know, like, but you support Jim Jordan for speaker? What are we talking about? First of all, that's a ridiculous thing in terms of the circumstances of how that all worked out. The other element that we wanted to highlight, though, is how big of a loss this was for Trump and how irrelevant he appeared to be in this entire process. Put this up there. Do not forget that he endorsed Jim Jordan hardcore 6 days ago. He said, Jim Jordan has been a star. I completely support him for Speaker of the House. Quote, he will be a great speaker and has my complete and total endorsement. He didn't even win a majority of the votes.
I love how he goes on and on about his wrestling record as if that's relevant here.
Yeah, that's totally relevant to this entire thing. But it's fascinating to me that the House Republicans did not care at all what Trump had to say in this. And Trump actually appears to be a tertiary character at best in this entire saga for ultimately what will be the highest ranking Republican in the United States.
Yeah,
so
true.
That's a pretty substantial loss, I think, for him.
You know, I wonder what you think about the Saagar. I feel like if he had, when he really has power is when he not only like affirmatively endorses someone, but when he rips the opponent to shreds and makes that person toxic and nuclear. And he didn't say a word against Steve Scalise. So it makes it so that people aren't afraid they're going to get like punished or smeared as a rhino or whatever if they backed him. And so that's why I feel like just his like positive affirmative endorsement of Jim Jordan, it didn't scare people. It didn't really matter for them was my reading of the situation.
No, you're right. Absolutely. It's interesting too that that he didn't matter, but also that the disparate concerns about Scalise run the gamut. You have more Freedom Caucus types. They trust Jim Jordan. They don't really trust Steve Scalise because he's former leadership. They want to continue to back Steve Scalise, even though Jordan himself is like, listen, I'll back Steve Scalise. Then you've got the Nancy Mace types, or quote, a whole other story, as Kevin said. But you also have a few people like Ken Buck and others who are upset with both Scalise and Jordan for both saying that, who refused to say whether the 2020 election was stolen. So he's like, I can't vote for either of these guys.
Didn't you have a couple of people saying, I will only vote for Kevin McCarthy?
A couple of people said I will only vote. Most of them have come around and they voted for Steve Scalise or they voted for Kevin. The point is that we are nowhere even close to electing a speaker. Steve Scalise may have won the majority. Personally, I don't think he's going to be the speaker. I don't think he gets to 217.
Here's my other question here is, you know, this is all sparked by Matt Gaetz predominantly, and, you know, it seems like he just like genuinely despises Kevin McCarthy and I think has this like personal issues over the fact that he's being investigated on ethics right now. Whatever. I'm not going to get in Matt Gaetz's head. I don't know what his goals are, but it doesn't seem like he's really achieved anything. Like, what has he achieved?
Chaos, his name in headlines, fundraising.
Yeah, I mean, that's like, in terms of his stated goals about like, we're gonna spend less and we're not gonna have Ukraine aid. And, you know, this thing he floated that, oh, maybe we'll get these like actually reforms that I would support, like stock trading bans or whatever. It's right now, it doesn't seem like there's any kind of negotiations over any of that going on. So it really does seem like the only thing he's gonna get is Kevin McCarthy, who apparently personally didn't like, out, and someone else in. But it's not clear to me that he's really achieved any of his ends.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I don't disagree with you, actually, at all. In terms of the Ukraine aid, I do actually think he won a victory there, just to show you that they could, you know, Kevin McCarthy was going to put some sort of Ukraine aid on the floor. Up until Israel, I think Ukraine actually was dead in terms of aid. Now, they might get something if they tie it forward. But don't forget, Jim Jordan came out and said, no tying Israel aid to Ukraine. He explicitly said, we're going to do Israel first, and we're going to pass that, and then we'll talk about Ukraine.
So then Gaetz should be supporting him.
Well, yeah, I mean, I agree.
He's saying he's open to Scalise's
The thing is that Scalise himself, Scalise is a chameleon. He's never said one public word about Ukraine. I've looked, by the way, in the last year. He has never said anything. So if he has a sizable amount of his caucus that won't go for it, then he'll just quietly be like, no, we're not going to tie it together. I think actually McCarthy was a lot more sympathetic to Ukraine aid than he originally led on. In that way, I do think it is a victory. And at the very least, those people, Marjorie and Matt Gaetz, many others, opponents of Ukraine aid, they could prevail in this. So even though we talked previously where I do think something will come through, there is a chance that they disaggregate it and that it's only Israel alone. We'll see.
We'll see. But yeah, I feel like a lot of the heated rhetoric and the audacious goals of Matt Gaetz right now seem to have not come to fruition. So anyway, it continues to be chaos. I genuinely don't know how it's going to shake out, who's going to end. It could be neither Jim Jordan or Steve Scalise or Kevin McCarthy. It could be someone different entirely. You could end up with this dude. I always forget his name. McHenry, is he the one?
Patrick McHenry, yeah.
Patrick McHenry. Could end up with him just hanging out in the spot for a while and then just deciding.
I'm getting sick of these bow ties, Patrick.
And then just deciding like, we just decided we can't actually pass legislation with the temporary Speaker of the House. Who knows, but we'll keep an eye on it. Hey guys, if you like that video, go to breakingpoints.com, become a premium subscriber and help us build the best independent media organization on the planet.
That's right. We're subscriber funded. We're building something new. We want to replace these failing mainstream media organizations.
So again, to subscribe, it's breakingpoints.com.